Hey everybody, Lior again from Ramon Advisory, and we are continuing our series on the R&D Tax Incentive. Today we're going to discuss the process of putting through an R&D tax incentive for your company. So the first thing to understand is it works on a financial year basis. A company needs to finish the financial year of their innovation, and only then is the incentive open to them. The deadline is 10 months after year end. So if your company year end is June, you've got 10 months until the April of the next year. You don't have to wait till the April of the next year. You can do it in July immediately and obviously get your benefit back as soon as possible. A lot of companies that are in losses want to submit as soon as possible because then those losses can turn into cash within 2 to 2.5 months. Now, the longer you wait, the longer it takes to get your money. If you're in a profit, you may want to wait because you don't want to submit your tax return straight away because you can become liable to the tax payable. Some companies that are in profits want to do it straight away. That's a decision to make. But just to highlight that point is if you're in a profit, you may want to wait. If you're in a loss, you probably want to do it as soon as possible. We have some clients that want to do it on the 1st of July itself. Now, there are two governing bodies. One is Oz Industry and the other is the ATO. Oz Industry essentially governs what is technical R&D, not worrying about the figures as much, worrying about is what you've done research and development according to the definition of what Oz Industry say is research and development. Now that first submission will mainly consist of a R&D technical report that will get submitted through their smart form and avenues, and then sometimes they get audited and sometimes they don't. That will then come back with a registration, an R&D registration. You are then registered and have met the deadline, that 10-month deadline. If you don't meet that deadline, you lose any R&D eligible expenditure that you may have spent in that previous financial year. Now, once that registration comes back registered, it's time to start really digging deep into the financials. Essentially what we're doing here, and this is quite misunderstood, but the technical and the financial items are not divorced from each other in an R&D tax incentive. They are very much married to each other and go hand in hand. What the financial side is doing is understanding or having a look at what the technical side said the R&D activities actually are, and then attributing a dollar value to those activities. They're not separate from each other. You cannot take a P&L and suddenly apply R&D percentages to it and come up with a value that makes sense. No, it has to be that the R&D activities are being monetized essentially. Now, there are many ways of doing this. One of the ways is to take your P&L and try to understand those technical activities, how do they fit into your financials? P&L and balance sheet, in fact, depending on where you put those figures and depending on what's eligible. Now, once that is all complete, the R&D figures will be put into the R&D categories. There are categories where your eligible R&D activities will fit into, and eventually it will go into what's called an R&D tax incentive schedule. That schedule gets given to your tax accountant for inclusion in your tax return. And just a very important point, that tax return needs to be filled in very correctly with the figures in that schedule. If it's not filled in correctly, it is a trigger by the ATO and it really could cause an audit of your R&D claim. And it's a shame because it may not have been audited without it. So really concentrate on filling in that tax return to the utmost perfection to get it right, to minimize that area of getting audited. That gets submitted. If you are due for a cashback benefit, you're looking at about a 4 to 6 week time frame, assuming the audit is selected, to get your money back. And if you are a tax saving benefit, you are looking at, well, that's immediate. You've submitted your tax return and your tax liability will be lower by your R&D tax incentive benefit. So to quickly summarize, you've got Oz Industry initially that governs your technical R&D activities. Is this eligible R&D or not? Once it's clarified that this is eligible R&D, then we move over to the ATO side of things. What is the dollar value that can be claimed? How much can you actually claim out of the monies that you have spent? What is eligible R&D expenditure in your financial statements that can be put through to get that R&D benefit? And that benefit will come either in a tax saving scenario or in a cashback scenario, dependent on where you are in your financial journey. Good luck with building that company and use the R&D tax incentive. It's a magnificent incentive to be used. Good luck.